Welcome to the deep dive. Tonight we're going somewhere a bit darker. We're moving past the strange lights people see in the sky.
Right into the shadows that follow. We're focusing on those mysterious figures who seem dedicated to making sure those sightings, they stay secrets.
We've got a huge stack of sources for you, the learner. Reports stretching all the way from 1947 right up to 2007, covering, well, pretty much the globe.
Yeah, from quiet towns in the US, Soviet parks, even presidential campaigns. We're looking at this consistent, global pattern of intimidation. The Men in Black, MIB.
In our mission tonight, it's really to break down just how consistent these reports are. What links, say, a coin vanishing into thin air in Maine.
To a researcher collapsing suddenly in Missouri. It seems to be this enforced silence.
Yeah.
A mandate.
You mentioned that these figures, they acted less like investigators and more like, what was it, constructs?
That's a term some researchers use, yeah. Like constructs specifically designed to enforce secrecy. Not gathering facts, but stopping the conversation cold. Using methods that are just deeply strange.
Psychological warfare, almost.
Absolutely. Often relying on intimidation, showing off impossible power. It's very different from how, regular government agents would operate.
Okay, that's the core difference we need to explore. This isn't just guys in suits saying, shh. It's high strangeness wearing a disguise. So let's start by defining this MIB archetype. What do these figures actually look like according to decades of reports? Most people probably think of the movie MIB, right? Sharp suits, cool gadgets.
Sure, the Hollywood version. But the actual witness reports, going way back to the 40s and 50s, paint a much, much creepier picture.
Yeah, the consistency in the descriptions is uncanny, that uniform.
It's always there, isn't it? The black suit, white shirt, thin black tie, neatly pressed.
Almost too neat sometimes, yeah.
Right.
Like it's unnatural.
Exactly. And maybe that uniform is just, window dressing. Yeah. A distraction. Or maybe just a really bad attempt at blending in.
Because the truly unsettling stuff is the physical description. That's where it gets into what researchers call the uncanny valley.
Precisely. That feeling you get when something looks almost human, but isn't. It triggers this deep sense of unease, even revulsion.
And the reports are full of these details. Skin described as unnaturally pale, sometimes waxy, or even having a slight luminescence.
And the hairlessness. Total lack of hair. No eyebrows, no eyelashes, just blankness where features should be makes the face look like a mask.
It's like they're trying to mimic being human but didn't quite get the details right, like a low-resolution copy.
That's a great analogy. And the lips often get described as looking crudely painted on or artificial. Just a flat slash of color, not moving naturally when they speak.
Imagine talking to someone like that. It wouldn't just be weird, it'd be fundamentally disturbing.
It raises that huge question, doesn't it? Is this look designed to terrify a form of psychological warfare?
Or is it just that?
Yeah.
Well, whatever they are, they physically can't mimic us perfectly. Like a machine struggling with the nuances.
Their speech and movement seem to back up that second idea. Voices are consistently described as flat, mechanical, stilted.
Like they're reading lines they don't understand. Or using weirdly formal, old-fashioned phrases.
Exactly. Slightly out of sync with normal conversation. And the way they move, oh boy.
Yeah, clumsy, awkward, robotic. Those words come up again and again.
Sometimes even stranger. John Keel wrote about witnesses who said the MIB seemed to glide instead of walk. Like they weren't affected by friction, just smoothly moving over rough ground.
Okay, that's just deeply unsettling. It supports what Herbert Hopkins said, doesn't it?
The famous quote, yeah. It was like talking to a machine. Not a man, but a machine disguised as a man. That sums up the core weirdness. They're not just government spooks. They feel fundamentally other.
And that otherness is key to the terror they create. It's not just fear of consequences, it's fear of the unknown nature of the enforcer itself.
So let's dive into that Hopkins case. It's 1976, Maine. Dr. Herbert Hopkins, a respected physician, a trained hypnotist, not someone prone to hysterics.
Right, he's quietly looking into an abduction case, keeping it low-key. The perfect target, in a way. Incredible, stable.
And this is where the campfire story really starts. It's a quiet evening. The phone rings.
Just a normal night.
The caller is vague, says he's from some organization investigating the same case. Asks Hopkins if he's alone. Can he come over right now?
Hopkins says yes, hangs up the phone.
And instantly, bam, 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 a loud knock on his door.
Whoa. Okay, so not possible. They couldn't have traveled that fast.
Impossible. Suggests the caller was already there, waiting, right outside.
Chilling. So he opened the door.
And there he is, the figure. Pale skin, totally bald, black suit, those flat, emotionless eyes. And the voice, mechanical, resonant, seeming to come from nowhere specific.
Just looking at it must have been terrifying.
But it gets worse. This MIB didn't just rely on the creepy appearance or vague threats. He demonstrated something impossible.
Well, a coin. This is the famous part.
He tells Hopkins, take out a penny. Just a normal copper penny. Hopkins does.
Okay.
The MIB tells him, hold it in your palm. Look at it. Focus. Hopkins stares at this ordinary coin. It starts to shimmer like heat haze rising off pavement, but right there in his hand. Then it blurs.
Wow.
And then it just fades. Slowly, horrifyingly. It vanishes completely. Gone.
Just gone. Into thin air.
Completely dematerialized. And then the MIB delivers that absolutely bone-chilling line in that flat, dead voice. Neither you nor anyone else on this plane will ever see that coin again.
That's not just a threat like, we'll hurt you. That's a statement about controlling reality, or at least perception.
It establishes their power as something beyond human understanding. It's pure psychological dominance. Forget the law. This is something else entirely.
But there's that weird detail about the MIB seeming weak.
Yes, that's fascinating. Hopkins, being a doctor, noticed the figure seemed to falter as the visit went on. Speech slowed down, breathing got shallow, labored.
Like it was an effort to be there.
Maybe. And at one point, the MIB takes out this small metal thing, like a lipstick case, presses it to his lips, as if it was helping him breathe or speak or just maintain his presence.
So the disguise or the projection or whatever it was seemed fragile, like it was running out of power.
Possibly. It adds this layer of bizarre vulnerability, but it didn't lessen the threat. Because then the MIB revealed he knew things Hopkins had never told anyone. Details from the private hypnosis sessions.
Proving impossible knowledge. Just like the impossible coin trick.
Exactly. The final command was blunt. Destroy all records of the case you're working on. Everything. Tapes, notes, all of it.
And Hopkins did it.
He did, completely shaken, convinced he'd encountered something profoundly dangerous and not of this world. He burned everything. The fear completely overrode his curiosity. That's the MIB effect.
So the Hopkins case shows the individual intimidation. But these figures also went after the organizations, right? Trying to shut down the whole field of study.
Oh, absolutely. If you look back to the early 1950s, there's the case of Albert K. Bender. He founded the International Flying Saucer Bureau, the IFSB.
Which was actually getting pretty big, wasn't it? International members, a newsletter.
Yeah, it was gaining real momentum. Bender was coordinating information, trying to build a serious, structured approach to UFO research. And supposedly, he felt he was close to figuring something important out.
A threat to secrecy, basically.
A direct threat. Centralized research is much harder to dismiss or control than scattered individuals. So what happens? He gets a visit. Not one MIB, but 3.
3 of them. And Bender's description, it was pretty extreme, wasn't it?
Years later, he talked about it, said they wore the dark suits but had these glowing, hypnotic eyes. And crucially, he claimed they communicated telepathically.
Telepathically, wow.
He said they didn't speak aloud but projected feelings of intense dread directly into his mind. An overwhelming sense of fear and futility.
That's next-level psychological attack.
Yeah.
No defense against that.
None, and the result was immediate. Bender just shut it all down, abruptly disbanded the IFSB, stopped publishing, went completely silent for years, told friends his life depended on it.
Just like that. Pulled the plug on his whole organization.
Instantly. His colleagues were baffled, but the message to the wider UFO community was loud and clear. Get too organized, dig too deep, and this is what happens.
And this pattern repeated. The 3 figures, the psychic pressure.
According to researchers like John Keel, yes. He collected reports from places like West Virginia, California, where witnesses described groups of 3 MIBs. Always the stiff movements, the mechanical speed.
And that feeling, that oppressive psychic weight.
Exactly. Witnesses felt drained, terrified, their will to resist just gone. Keel had his own theory about this.
Right, he didn't think they were necessarily aliens from space.
No, he called them ultraterrestrials. Beings coexisting with us, maybe interdimensional, capable of manipulating human perception, reality, even memory.
So under that theory, the MIB aren't just government agents. They're something else entirely, using psychological tricks to make us silence ourselves.
That was his take, and whether you buy the ultra-terrestrial idea or not, the effect is undeniable. These visits consistently shut down promising research efforts. The psychological warfare, whatever its source, it worked. It enforced the silence.
Okay, so this psychological warfare, this intimidation, it only really works if they know who to target, which implies surveillance on a level that's, well, kind of terrifying,
Yeah.
especially back then.
It really is. That lack of privacy, the feeling of being watched even when you think you're safe, that's a huge part of the MIB legend. And the Gurdon, Arkansas case from 1975 is a textbook example.
Gurdon, a quiet rural town, right? What happened there?
Multiple people, solid local citizens, saw these bright, silent lights doing impossible maneuvers over the railroad tracks, glowing spheres, oval shapes, darting around. Definitely not planes or helicopters.
Okay, a typical sighting in some ways, but then came the visits.
Exactly. Within days, two men in dark suits started showing up at people's houses. Pale skin, no expression, moving stiffly. Classic MAB look.
And the scary part was who they visited.
That's what freaked everyone out. They seemed to know exactly who had seen the lights, even people who had only mentioned it quietly to their spouse or a close neighbor. Private conversations.
How is that even possible in 1975? No internet, no cell phones tracking everything.
It suggests surveillance that, as one account put it, bordered on the impossible for that time. They somehow knew about whispers behind closed doors. It baffled and terrified the community.
Made people feel like there was nowhere safe to even talk about it.
Precisely. And the intimidation tactic was subtle but chilling. Calm, flat voices, but the message was clear. Something like, it would be best if you stopped talking about those lights.
Not quite a direct threat, but
loaded. They'd add, people might misunderstand, there could be consequences. Delivered like a statement of fact.
and it worked. People clammed up.
Completely. Faced with figures who somehow knew their private thoughts and conversations, most people were just too scared to say another word. The lights were weird, sure, but the men who followed, they felt like a direct danger.
So it wasn't just about hiding evidence, it was about planting fear, making people silence themselves.
That seems to be the core MIB strategy, self-enforcing silence through terror.
But what happens when the target isn't just a casual witness, but someone actively investigating, looking for physical proof?
Then the stakes seem to get much higher. Take the case of Ron Johnson. He was a MUFON director in Missouri, highly respected.
MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, a big civilian research group.
Exactly. And Johnson's specialty was meticulous documentation, especially of physical evidence. Trace cases, landing marks, soil samples, biological effects on plants or animals. Tangible stuff.
The kind of evidence that's hard to just dismiss as imagination.
Precisely the kind of evidence that seems to attract the most severe MIB attention. According to his colleagues, Johnson reported being approached by figures who fit the MIB description.
And they warned him.
Explicitly. Warned him about pursuing leads connected to those physical trace samples. They told him, point blank, it would be better for his health if he reconsidered.
Better for his health. That sounds ominous. Especially given the MIB lore about causing illness or bad luck.
Extremely ominous. And then the worst happened.
At a public meeting.
Yeah, June 1994. Johnson was at a MUFON meeting, presenting or just attending. He took a sip from a glass and moments later just collapsed. Violently and suddenly, he died right there.
Oh my God. That's shocking. Was there an official cause?
It was murky. The official examination didn't find a clear, immediate cause. Toxicology reports were apparently inconclusive, or at least that's what the community understood. It was ruled a sudden, unexplained death.
But given the prior warnings, linking his health directly to his research into physical evidence.
The UFO community couldn't ignore the timing. It was seen almost universally as the MIB making good on their threat, the ultimate warning.
Whether it was truly supernatural or some kind of undetectable human action, the message was clear.
Devastatingly clear. It sent a chill through the entire research field. It suggested the MIB weren't just about intimidation. They could, and perhaps would, enforce their silence with lethal force if pushed too far on physical evidence.
I can only imagine the impact that had.
It was profound. People got scared. Some researchers pulled back, especially from investigating those sensitive physical trace cases. Why risk it? It achieved perfect self-censorship. The most compelling evidence was voluntarily left alone out of fear.
So we have individual intimidation, community suppression, and even a potential fatality linked to physical evidence. What about someone who just collected these stories? Like Timothy Green Beckley.
Beckley. Yeah, he was a prolific publisher and UFO hunter for decades. He gathered countless MIB reports, essentially becoming a clearinghouse for this specific type of encounter.
And his files show patterns beyond just the initial visit.
Definitely. They highlight how invasive and psychologically damaging these encounters often were. It wasn't always just a creepy conversation.
Like that New Jersey case you mentioned.
Right. MIB-like figures banging hard on the door, not waiting to be invited in, actually searching the person's closets.
Searching closets? For what?
Who knows? Maybe looking for evidence, maybe just pure intimidation, then demanding, "You will forget what you saw. Do not speak of it again." Treating the witnesses' home and memory like they owned them.
So the violation goes beyond fear. It's about power and control over the person's entire reality.
Exactly. And Beckley's work emphasizes that the primary damage wasn't usually physical harm, though the Johnson case is a terrifying exception. It was psychological.
That sense of dread you mentioned.
Profound dread, yes. Feeling totally drained of energy after an encounter. Strange memory lapses about the visit itself, or even the original sighting, and just having the will to speak completely extinguished.
Like the experience itself rewires your motivation to share it.
It seems designed to do exactly that. Psychological erasure, making the witness doubt their own sanity, or simply making the effort of telling the story feel impossible or dangerous.
And Beckley believed he was targeted himself for publishing this stuff.
He claims so, yes. He reported persistent surveillance. Seeing the same dark sedan parked outside his New York City apartment, often late at night, headlights off, just sitting there. Watching. And if he tried to approach it or get a better look, it would just silently drive away and vanish. Not direct confrontation, but constant low-level psychological pressure. Stalking.
It reinforces that idea of them as, what did you call them?
Beckley called them the keepers of silence. Their entire function seems to be ensuring the mystery stays intact, actively working against anyone trying to bring it into the light.
Okay, so we've detailed the tactics of these keepers of silence. Now let's look closer at what they seem so desperate to hide. The hard evidence, the stuff that proves something tangible happened.
Right, the close encounters of the second kind, or CE2s. These are the cases where there are physical traces left behind: landing marks, burnt ground, electromagnetic effects, physiological effects on witnesses, stuff you can measure.
And it makes sense MIB activity would cluster around these cases because they're the hardest to explain away, right? You can't just say swamp gas when there's a 40-foot circle of cooked earth.
Exactly. These cases provide objective, sometimes forensic, proof that something unusual interacted with our environment.
You mentioned the Trans-en-Provence case in France as a kind of gold standard. Why that one specifically?
Because of how it was investigated. In 1981, a farmer, Renato Nicolai, saw this oval, metallic-looking craft, maybe the size of a car or a small helicopter, land briefly in his field. Broad daylight. Heard a faint hiss, then it took off after less than a minute.
Okay, fairly standard landing report. What made it different?
The French response. France had, and still has, under a different name, Japan. It was a government-funded scientific body specifically tasked with investigating UFO reports seriously.
A government agency taking UFOs seriously with science. That's rare.
Extremely rare, especially then. They didn't just dismiss it. They treated the landing site like a potential crime scene, cordoned it off, took soil samples, vegetation samples, the works, full forensic investigation.
And they found?
They found clear, measurable evidence. The soil where the object rested showed significant compression, consistent with something heavy estimated at several tons pressing down suddenly.
Okay, physical impression. What else?
Microscopically, the soil structure was altered, suggesting exposure to brief but very intense heat. And the plants inside the landing zone, alfalfa, I think it was?
Yeah, what about the plants?
They showed biochemical changes. Reduced chlorophyll levels, cell damage consistent with exposure to strong electromagnetic radiation, maybe microwaves, not consistent with chemical burns or just being crushed.
So scientific proof of weight, heat, and radiation from an unknown object.
Exactly. And this wasn't some amateur group. This was published by an official French government scientific body. Their conclusion was basically something heavy, physical, and energetic landed here and left measurable traces.
It's such a stark contrast, isn't it? While U.S. witnesses are being scared into silence about vanishing coins.
The French government is documenting cellular damage from unknown energy sources. It shows what could be known if the phenomenon were studied openly and scientifically without the MIB-style suppression.
So Trans-en-Provence showed residual effects. What about cases showing active energy use? Like weapons, almost.
The Trancas incident in Argentina back in 1963 is a chilling example of that. 3 sisters on a farm witnessed 5 glowing orbs maneuvering nearby.
5 of them.
Okay. And as these things hovered, the whole environment went haywire. A deep humming sound vibrated through the air. The house lights flickered erratically, dimming and surging. The radio filled with static.
And the dog. I remember reading the dog freaked out.
Yeah, the family dog panicked completely. Animals often seem sensitive to this stuff, but then it got even more direct.
The beam.
A narrow beam of light shot out from one of the orbs and hit a heavy iron gate latch nearby. Instantly, the metal glowed bright red, became visibly warped from the heat.
Whoa, like a cutting torch, but from a distance.
Exactly. Focused intense energy, another beam hit the ground, scorching the dirt in a concentrated patch.
So this wasn't just passive hovering. This was direct interaction, using energy in a very specific way.
Definitely. And later analysis of soil from the scorched patch showed mineral changes consistent with intense, localized heat again, not like a normal fire.
And the witnesses felt effects too, right? Like the MIB warnings often mentioned sickness.
Yes, the sisters reported suffering from nausea, severe headaches, and just feeling unwell for weeks afterwards. The dog became lethargic, sick too.
So it's not just physical traces on the ground, it's biological effects on living things and demonstrated energy projection. This is the kind of high strangeness evidence that suppression seems designed to bury.
Precisely. It proves technological capabilities far beyond ours and hints at potential danger. Hard to dismiss, easy to fear.
Okay, so we have landings, trace evidence, energy beams. What about crashes? The Kecksburg case in Pennsylvania in 1965 often gets called the Roswell of the East.
It's a really significant case because it seems to show MIB figures working with, or maybe even directing, the official military response.
What happened? What did people see?
It started with a fiery object seen streaking across the sky over several states, then apparently coming down in the woods near Kecksburg. Locals went looking and found something.
Found what?
A large object, maybe 9-12 feet long, shaped like a giant acorn. It was described as metallic, maybe bronze-colored, and crucially, having strange symbols on it, like hieroglyphs or some kind of writing, partially embedded in the ground.
An actual craft with symbols. That's huge.
Massive. But the official response was incredibly fast. Within hours, the area was swarming with military personnel and trucks. They sealed off the woods completely.
That speed suggests they knew what they were looking for or had a plan ready.
That's what shocked the locals, how quickly the military got there and took control. But here's the MIB connection.
They were there too, alongside the soldiers.
Witnesses reported seeing men in dark suits, not military uniforms, alongside the soldiers. These suited figures looked out of place, seemed stern, authoritative.
And were they just observing?
No, some witnesses got the distinct impression they were directing the operation, giving orders. And they were the ones enforcing the silence directly with civilians.
Killing people.
Blunt commands: you did not see that, you will not speak of it again. Total denial, total suppression, delivered with authority.
So this case suggests MIB aren't always separate from the government. They might be a specific layer of the secrecy apparatus. The psychological enforcers brought in for sensitive retrievals.
That's certainly one interpretation. They had the authority to command military personnel, seemingly, and the specific skills to intimidate civilian witnesses into silence. And, of course, the object. It was gone by the next morning, hauled away on a military flatbed, covered up, case closed, officially, mystery enforced.
We've seen MIB silence farmers, researchers, whole communities. But what about people whose job involves observing the sky? Highly trained professionals like pilots. Surely their testimony carries more weight.
You'd think so. Their training demands accurate observation and reporting. Lives depend on it. But the suppression mechanism often shifts from direct MIB intimidation to institutional dismissal or obfuscation when dealing with a professional.
Like the Gorman dogfight case. That was really early on, in 1948.
Classic example. LT George Gorman, experienced WWII combat pilot, flying a P-51 Mustang near Fargo, North Dakota. He gets into this extended aerial encounter, a 27-minute chase with a small, bright, fast-moving white light.
A dogfight implies it was maneuvering intelligently, reacting to him.
Absolutely. Gorman reported it showed intelligent control, pulling off maneuvers his P-51 couldn't possibly match, out-turning him, out-climbing him. He chased it up to 13,000 feet before his plane stalled, and the light just zoomed straight up and disappeared.
And he wasn't the only witness.
No. Air traffic controllers saw it on the scope intermittently, and the pilot and passenger of a nearby Piper Cub also saw the light and Gorman's plane maneuvering near it. Multiple credible witnesses. Gorman was adamant it wasn't a balloon or another aircraft.
So what was the official explanation?
After an investigation, a lighted weather balloon?
Seriously, after a 27-minute aerial engagement reported by a combat pilot and other witnesses.
Seriously. It flew in the face of Gorman's detailed report of its speed and maneuverability. That's institutional suppression. Take credible professional testimony and issue a mundane explanation that contradicts the data, just to close the case and maintain the official narrative. It undermines trust, but keeps the secret.
And this happens even when safety is involved, like near misses with airliners.
Frighteningly, yes. The Tenerife near collision in 1979 is a stark example. A commercial passenger jet, a Super Caravelle, was on final approach to Tenerife North Airport in the Canary Islands. Suddenly, the pilots had to take emergency evasive action, a steep climb, to avoid colliding with a huge, brilliantly lit, structured object that appeared directly in their flight path.
A huge object, and the pilots saw it clearly.
Yes, they described it as structured, metallic, intensely bright. But here's the chilling part. It was completely invisible to the airport's radar.
Invisible to radar, but visually confirmed by experienced pilots who had to dodge it.
Exactly. This wasn't just a strange light. It was a near catastrophe involving a passenger plane caused by an object that defied known physics and detection methods. It violated all air safety protocols.
That should have triggered a massive international investigation, surely, by ICAO, the aviation safety body.
Logically, yes. But the MIB mandate, whether enacted by actual MIBs or just institutional inertia driven by secrecy, ensures these events get downplayed, classified, or quietly forgotten. The implications for air safety are terrifying, but preserving the secret around the phenomenon's capabilities seems to take precedence. Hashtag 4.2 political power and the Jimmy Carter reversal in 1973.
Okay, so pilots can be dismissed. What about the highest levels of power? What about a president? Jimmy Carter actually saw a UFO, right? And talked about it openly.
He did. In 1969, before he was governor, he and several other people saw this luminous, self-lit object in the sky over Leary, Georgia. He described it changing color and size. He was clearly impressed and puzzled by it.
And he wasn't shy about it. He filed a report. And later, when running for president.
He made that famous promise. He said if elected, he would release all the government's classified information about UFOs to the public. He believed citizens had a right to know.
A direct challenge to the decades of secrecy from someone aiming for the Oval Office. How did the system react to that?
Reports surfaced from within his campaign staff and later his administration. Aides mentioned being approached by men who fit the MIB profile, nondescript guys in dark suits, driving unmarked cars, delivering veiled warnings.
Warnings about what?
About encouraging Carter's openness on the UFO topic, suggesting it wasn't wise, hinting at potential negative consequences for his campaign or presidency. Subtle but persistent pressure.
Applied directly to his inner circle.
Exactly. Targeting the people around him to influence his stance.
And it worked, didn't it? He got elected president.
And the files were never released. He completely reversed his position.
Why? What reason did he give?
The official reason was vague national security concerns. He basically went silent on the issue he championed.
So whether those figures pressuring his staff were actual MIs of the Hopkins variety, or just very discreet human intelligence agents using MIB-like psychological tactics.
The end result was the same. The suppression mechanism reached the very top. It demonstrated that the power structure protecting this secret, whatever it is, was strong enough to override a presidential promise and personal conviction. The silence was maintained, even against the will of the president himself. Hashtag 4.3 international mass sightings and institutional confusion.
This MIB phenomena, this suppression, it seems very U.S.-centric in the classic telling, but the sightings are global. Does the suppression work the same way everywhere?
It's mostly a global phenomenon of silence, yes. But sometimes, especially during periods of political change or with mass sightings, the system seems to break down temporarily. The Voronezh case in the Soviet Union is fascinating.
Voronezh, 1989. Right near the end of the Cold War, during Gorbachev's glasnost, the policy of more openness.
Exactly. And you had this absolutely wild sighting in a public park. Dozens of witnesses, mostly kids, but adults too.
What did they see? It was pretty out there, wasn't it?
Completely bizarre. A large, glowing red sphere landed. Out came these giant figures described as maybe 9 or 10 feet tall, with tiny heads or maybe helmets and 3 eyes. Accounts varied slightly, plus a smaller, boxy, robot-like figure.
Giant aliens and a robot in a Soviet park.
Okay. And they interacted. Reports claim they used a tube-like weapon to shoot a beam that temporarily paralyzed one teenage boy. They supposedly collected samples, made a rock disappear and reappear. Pure high strangeness.
So, multiple witnesses, bizarre details. How did the Soviet authorities handle that, especially during glasnost?
This is the astonishing part. TASS, the official Soviet state news agency, published a detailed report about it. They confirmed the landing, cited multiple witnesses, even named scientists who had visited the site and found evidence of landing traces, depressions in the ground, heightened radiation levels.
The state news agency confirmed giant aliens landed.
For a brief moment, yes. It was a huge crack in the usual wall of silence. Probably because it happened so publicly with so many witnesses during a time when the old rules of total state control were loosening. They couldn't easily deny it.
A rare glimpse of transparency did at last.
Not really. The initial task report caused a global sensation, but follow-up scientific details were scarce. The story eventually faded, contained. The institutional habit of secrecy reasserted itself, even over that initial burst of openness. The MIB mandate, in effect, won out.
And we see similar mass sightings more recently, too, like in India.
Right. The Siliguri UFO lights in 2007, mass sighting in the eastern Himalayas, over tea plantations. Dozens, maybe hundreds of witnesses, workers, farmers, locals.
What did they report?
A silent, large, intensely bright golden white orb that hung in the sky, then split into several smaller lights. These smaller lights then performed complex, coordinated maneuvers for quite some time before vanishing.
And these are witnesses with no real cultural baggage about MIBs or Roswell, presumably.
Exactly. Tea plantation workers in rural India. Their descriptions were remarkably consistent, ruling out conventional things like planes, drones, or ball lightning. It just reinforces that these structured, intelligently controlled aerial objects are seen worldwide by diverse groups.
And in these mass sightings, maybe the MIB can't visit everyone.
Probably not practical, but the result is often the same. Initial excitement, maybe some local news coverage, but then institutional silence. No serious, sustained official investigation. The event becomes an anomaly, a footnote, effectively suppressed without needing legions of men in black suits. The system defaults to silence. Hashtag outro.
So wrapping this all up, we've journeyed through decades of reports across continents, and the consistency is just staggering. From the MIB's unsettling appearance, that uncanny valley look, the mechanical way they act,
to their tactics, the impossible knowledge, the demonstrations of power like the vanishing coin, the psychic pressure, the targeted warnings.
And the ultimate goal seems crystal clear: enforce silence. Whether these figures are, actual government agents using bizarre methods or something truly like Keel's ultra-terrestrials, their job description is singular.
Keep the lid on. The mystery must remain a mystery. That seems to be the directive.
And the sources show they're not just focused on the sightings themselves, are they? The lights are just the trigger.
Exactly. Their real focus seems to be on the witness, on manipulating their psychology, erasing their memory, destroying their credibility, or instilling such profound fear that they silence themselves. The power isn't just physical, it's the power to enforce silence, to control the narrative by controlling the messenger.
And the things they work so hard to suppress, cases like Trans-en-Provence, Tronckes, Kecksburg, they point to tangible, physical reality. Heavy objects landing, leaving measurable traces, exhibiting advanced energy capabilities.
That physical evidence is likely why the suppression is so intense. It's the smoking gun that validates the entire phenomenon, taking it out of the realm of subjective experience and into objective reality.
Which leaves us, and you the listener, with this really chilling final thought to chew on. Why? Why is hiding the truth about lights in the sky so incredibly important?
Important enough to justify terrifying ordinary people, maybe even children. Important enough to potentially reverse a presidential promise. To ignore risks to aviation safety. To perhaps even contribute to the death of a researcher digging too close to physical proof.
If the MIB are just human agents, what secret could possibly be that big? What truth about our reality are they protecting with such extreme, bizarre measures?
And if they aren't human, why the act? Why the clumsy suits, the pale skin, the weird voices? Why pretend at all? Is the disguise itself part of the psychological manipulation?
The sheer existence of this persistent, decades-long MIB phenomenon suggests something profound. It suggests the UFO sighting, the extraordinary event. That's just the beginning. The real story, the deeper, perhaps darker story, might actually lie in the relentless, strange, and terrifying effort to make sure we forget we ever saw it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into something pretty important. We're going to try and cut through all the noise, the hype, the speculation around unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. We're focusing strictly on the evidence, seriously. We've synthesized data from 18 of the most, rigorously investigated encounters, multi-source stuff. We're talking official military radar logs, documented physical traces like actual marks left behind, investigation transcripts, testimony from people who really know what they're looking at. Think Navy pilots, air traffic controllers, police officers, defense folks. So the mission here, find the common threads, the smoking guns, if you will. What does all this high credibility evidence really tell us when you put it all together? And, well, the implication that seems to keep coming up, and we'll test this case by case, it suggests something physical, something intelligent, and definitely something operating way outside our known physics has repeatedly interacted with us, with our tech, our people.
Right. And what's really key here, what makes this deep dive maybe a bit different, is the standard we're setting. We're deliberately moving past just stories, the anecdotal stuff. We're only looking at incidents where you have multiple sensors, multiple sources backing things up. You know, when you get a visual sighting,
Okay.
but then you pair it with advanced radar tracking, and it's confirmed by infrared video, and maybe, just maybe, you even find physical evidence on the ground.
Yeah.
That's when it gets really interesting. That's when you actually have something solid to analyze, something tangible. We're focusing on trained professionals, top-tier government equipment, and, importantly, documented long-term effects, whether that's effects on the environment or, tragically, on the witnesses themselves. So think of this as a data synthesis project. We're looking for patterns. Patterns in capability, maybe intent, and honestly, maybe the most disturbing pattern is the official response sometimes.
Okay, let's start where it gets really tough for the skeptics. The physical evidence. Stuff you can actually touch, measure, not just lights in the sky. These are events that left, like a physical scar, a mark on the ground, burns on a person, actual melted rock. Let's dive in. We begin in Socorro, New Mexico, 1964, and the key figure here is Lonnie Zamora. What makes him credible? He wasn't just some guy seeing lights. He was a police officer, respected, known for being level-headed. And the situation was, well, kind of ironic. He was actually chasing a speeder. Then he hears this incredible roar, like a sustained explosion. He thought maybe the local dynamite shack went up.
Right. Standard procedure. He breaks off the chase, goes to investigate.
Exactly. He drives his patrol car up over this little ridge, and suddenly it's not a dynamite shack. Not even close.
He sees this object down in a ravine, describes it as oval-shaped, gleaming white metal, and it's resting on these four thin, kind of spindly legs, struts maybe, and he noticed something else. Strange symbols, almost like hieroglyphs, etched onto the side near the base, which interestingly people later connected to another famous case, Kecksburg, but that's another story. He also caught a glimpse, just briefly, of two small figures, like child-sized, dressed in white coveralls near the object. They seemed startled when they saw him, and poof, they disappeared, moved quickly behind the craft.
So right away, you've got the humanoid element.
Yeah.
But the real core here is the physics, the physical evidence.
Absolutely. Because as Zamora got closer, maybe 50 feet away, this thing, it came alive.
How so?
A really piercing, high-pitched noise started up, and then from underneath it, this bluish flame appeared. But Zamora was clear. It wasn't like a rocket blast, chaotic. It was controlled, steady, like directed energy.
Wow, okay.
Zamora, quite rightly, backed off fast. He thought the whole thing might just explode.
Can't blame him.
Then the object lifted off. Silently this time, the laser retracted into it, and then it just shot away. Incredible speed. Gone, leaving total silence behind.
But it didn't leave nothing behind, did it? That's the key.
Exactly, that's the smoking gun. Investigators were on site almost immediately. Project Blue Book guys, people from White Sands Missile Range, the FBI.
Always fun.
4 distinct landing impressions. Indentations in the hard desert ground, perfectly matching the position of the 4 legs Zamora described, like landing pads.
Okay, that's specific.
Very specific. And around these impressions, the local bushes, creosote bushes, they were blackened, scorched, clearly indicating intense focused heat had been there.
So not just marks, but heat evidence too.
Right. And the official conclusion. Project Blue Book, Major Hector Quintanilla, I believe, classified it officially as unexplained. They stated Zamora was sincere, credible, and the physical evidence undeniable. It was like this thing left a literal stamp in the desert floor. Proof something real, something heavy, something hot had landed there.
Okay, that physical stamp idea. Let's carry that forward to Falcon Lake, Manitoba, Canada, 1967. This one. This takes physical evidence and makes it deeply personal. Tragically so. Our witness is Stefan Michalak. Not a pilot, not military. He was a prospector, experienced, practical guy. Again, not someone you'd expect to make things up.
Right, described as very down to earth.
He's out prospecting, and he stumbles upon this landed object, a metallic disc. Pretty big, maybe 35 feet across. He gets closer, cautiously, thinks maybe it's some kind of experimental U.S. aircraft that crashed.
He actually got close enough to touch it. Through his heavy prospecting glove, mind you. And he said the surface was smooth, seamless, and incredibly hot. Scorching hot.
Did he try to communicate?
He did. He called out. In English, then in Russian, just in case. No response. Just silence from the craft.
And then things took a turn.
A really terrifying turn. Suddenly, this panel, like a grid or a vent, opened up on the side of the disc, and bam! A blast of super hot air, maybe gas, shot out right at him. Smelled like sulfur, he said.
Hit him direct.
Yeah. Knocked him backwards. His shirt actually caught fire.
Oh my God.
But the injury itself became the crucial evidence. He suffered second-degree burns. Hospital confirmed it. But the pattern of the burns...
What about the pattern?
It was a distinct, grid-like pattern. Squares on his chest and stomach, precisely matching the grid vent he described seeing open up on the craft.
Whoa. Okay, that's specific isn't even the word.
Exactly. And his problems didn't end there. He suffered long-term health issues afterwards, chronic nausea, dizziness, recurring rashes that looked like radiation burns, significant weight loss. These symptoms plagued him for years. Very similar to radiation sickness.
And was there ground evidence, too, like in Scoro?
Absolutely. Investigators, the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Air Force, civilian researchers, they all went to the site. They found a circular area of scorched earth right where Michalak said the object landed.
Okay, scorched earth matches the heat.
But here's the clincher. Lab tests. They took soil samples from that scorched circle and they tested remnants of his burned clothing. Elevated levels of radioactive isotopes, specifically radium-226.
Radium-226, is that normal?
Not at those levels, not in that environment. Radium-226 doesn't just show up like that. It was a significant radioactive anomaly directly linked to the landing site and the witnesses' contaminated clothing.
Oh.
And for years afterwards, the vegetation in that exact circle just wouldn't grow back properly. More lingering, measurable proof that something incredibly energetic, possibly radioactive, had touched down there.
That theme, radiation damage, physical harm, it really culminates in the Cash Landrum case, Texas, 1980. This one is chilling because it seems to bring together civilian harm, a bizarre object, and a suspected military presence, followed by complete denial.
It's a landmark case for exactly those reasons. You have 3 witnesses, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Vicki's 7-year-old grandson, Colby, driving home late at night through this dark wooded area near Dayton, Texas.
And they see.
They encounter this massive object, hovering low over the road, completely blocking their path. They described it as diamond-shaped, pulsing with this intense orange-red light. And it was radiating heat, intense, roaring heat.
How intense.
So intense, it made the car's metal body hot to the touch. Betty Cash got out of the car briefly, touched the door handle, and it burned her hand instantly. The air itself felt thick with heat.
Just sitting there blocking the road.
Blocking the road, pulsing light, blasting heat. But then something even stranger happened.
What was that?
Helicopters. Lots of them. They started appearing, converging on the object. The witnesses counted at least 23, mostly big tandem rotor types like CH-47 Chinooks and some smaller Huey-style helicopters.
23 military helicopters.
That's what they reported seeing. And they weren't just flying by. They seemed to be actively involved with the object, escorting it, maybe trying to corral it or contain it somehow.
Okay, wait. If they saw that many clearly identifiable military helicopters, how on earth could the government later say none of their aircraft were anywhere near there that night? That just sounds impossible.
It is the absolute core contradiction of the case. Complete denial from every relevant agency. No U.S. military aircraft were in that area, they maintained. It's textbook gaslighting, frankly.
But the evidence wasn't just what they saw, right? It was what happened to them afterwards.
Exactly. The medical evidence is undeniable. All 3 suffered immediate, severe symptoms. Their skin became swollen, red, developed painful blisters, massive hair loss, excruciating eye pain, like welding flash burns, severe gastrointestinal damage, nausea, diarrhea, lasting symptoms.
Doctors confirmed this.
Oh, absolutely. Doctors documented everything meticulously. Betty Cash especially had extensive hospitalization records. The symptoms closely mirrored acute exposure to ionizing radiation. Specifically, beta and gamma radiation seemed likely based on the effects, including documented abnormalities in their blood cells.
So the real evidence here isn't a blurry photo. It's hospital charts, medical records.
Precisely. Verifiable medical documentation of severe, lasting physical trauma directly linked temporally and spatially to this encounter. That's incredibly powerful.
Did they try to sue?
They did. A $20 million lawsuit against the U.S. government. but it ultimately failed.
Why? If the medical evidence was so strong.
Because they couldn't definitively prove which specific government agency or entity was responsible for the object or the helicopters allegedly escorting it. The government maintained its wall of denial, leaving a void in the official record. They couldn't assign liability without proof of responsibility, despite the undeniable injuries.
So the trauma was real, documented, but officially. Nobody was responsible.
Yeah.
That's deeply disturbing.
It is. It highlights the potential human cost of these encounters and the extreme difficulty in getting official acknowledgement, let alone accountability. Okay, so if that first group of cases gave us physical traces, scars on the land and on people, this next section deals with evidence captured by technology. The electronic footprint, you might say, recorded by some of the most advanced military sensors on the planet. When you can't, scoop up radioactive soil, you rely on radar, infrared, high-speed cameras. And these cases, they just shatter our understanding of basic physics.
And we have to start with the big ones, right? The ones that really blew the lid off things recently. Nimitz, Tic Tac, Gimbal.
Absolutely. 2004, 2015, U.S. Navy carrier strike groups, and the witnesses here, Top Guns, Navy fighter pilots, people trained to identify anything that flies, their credibility is just off the charts.
So 2004, off the coast of California, the USS Nimitz carrier group. What happened first?
It started with the USS Princeton. It's an Aegis cruiser equipped with the SPY-1 radar system. This is arguably the most advanced naval radar in the world. Designed to track hundreds of targets, filter out clutter, birds, weather. It's incredibly sophisticated.
And it started picking up, what?
Anomalous tracks. Objects appearing suddenly way up high, like 80,000 feet, then dropping almost instantly down to sea level, maybe 20,000 feet in just seconds, hovering, then zipping off at speeds that, they didn't make sense. They weren't behaving like normal aircraft.
This is the radar saw them first.
Radar saw them first. Then they sent the fighters to take a look. Commander David Fravor was one of the lead pilots.
And he saw the Tic Tac.
He saw the Tic Tac. He described it exactly as the nickname suggests. White, oblong, maybe 40 feet long, completely smooth, no wings, no windows, no engines, no visible propulsion, no exhaust plume, just this white Tic Tac shape hanging in the air. Hovering, yeah, over this weird patch of churning water in an otherwise calm sea, like something was under the surface.
And the physics-defying part.
The interaction. Fravor decides to descend. Check it out. As he banks his FA-18 Super Hornet down, the Tic Tac instantly mirrors his movement, but upwards, maintaining the distance.
Okay, responsive.
Very responsive. Then Fravor decides to cut across the circle, go straight at it, head on, and the Tic Tac accelerated. Not just fast, instantaneously. Fravor described it as like 0 to hypersonic in a blink. It just vanished. And less than a second later, the radar operators on the Princeton picked it up again, 60 miles away, at Fravor's prearranged rendezvous point.
60 miles.
Yeah.
In less than a second.
Yeah. You do the math on the acceleration and G-forces required for that. For any known aircraft, even a missile, that's impossible. The G-force would crush the craft and anyone inside. This thing showed zero inertia. Like physics didn't apply to it.
Wow. Okay. Zero inertia. And then there's the gimbal footage from 2015. That showed something else.
Right. Different event. East Coast this time. USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Group. Captured by a Navy jet's FLIR pod that's forward-looking infrared. So it's these heat signatures.
And what did the FLIR show?
It showed this object glowing hot against the cold sky, kind of oval or saucer-shaped, flying along steadily. But then it starts to rotate. It turns along its long axis like it's rolling, while still flying perfectly straight ahead.
And you can hear the pilots on the recording, right?
Yeah, clear as day. Look at that thing, dude. It's rotating. They're just baffled.
Okay, so explain for us non-pilots. Why is rotating like that while flying straight so weird?
Well, think about how a plane flies. It needs lift from its wings. The airflow over the wings keeps it up. If you try to roll a conventional plane like that, especially slowly and controlled while moving forward, you completely disrupt the airflow. You lose lift.
So it should, what? Fall, tumble.
Exactly, stall and tumble out of control. But the gimbal object, it just rotates smoothly, effortlessly, while maintaining perfect forward flight and altitude. No wobble, no instability, meaning it's probably not flying using aerodynamics as we understand it. It suggests it's manipulating gravity or inertia around itself somehow, moving through the air without really interacting with it in the conventional way.
So you've got visual confirmation from elite pilots, multiple advanced radar systems tracking it, and confirmed infrared video from the Pentagon itself.
That's the trifecta. That convergence of data makes Nimitz and gimbal incredibly compelling. Modern, high-tech, high-credibility evidence, the gold standard, really.
And this kind of tech isn't just seen by the U.S. Navy. We see similar things globally, right? Like transmedium travel, things going into water.
Right. The Aguadilla UFO incident in Puerto Rico, 2013. This was captured by a U.S. Department of Homeland Security aircraft, a DHC-8 turboprop, using its thermal infrared camera.
What do they film?
They filmed this object, again, glowing hot on the thermal camera, moving fast at low altitude near the coast. Its flight path was erratic, but the really stunning part was watching it fly directly into the ocean.
Without slowing down. Or splashing.
Exactly. No splash, no apparent change in speed, no visible disturbance of the water. It just entered the water seamlessly. And then, moments later, it came back out of the water just as smoothly and flew off. Then things got even weirder. Just before it finally disappeared underwater for good, the video appears to show the single object splitting into two distinct, separate objects.
Split in two.
Looked like it, which adds controlled, rapid morphing or separation to its capabilities. Air to water, water to air, no problem. And maybe it can split itself. Defies our understanding of physics and material science.
Okay, sticking with the water theme, but moving to South America. The Chilean Navy video from 2014. Chile actually has an official government body to study UAPs, right?
They do. It's called the CITHA-A Committee for the Study of Anomalous Aerial Phenomena. Very serious group, involves military and scientific experts.
And they investigated this video.
Thoroughly. A Chilean Navy helicopter was on patrol off the coast near Valparaiso. They filmed a dark, solid-looking object for about 10 minutes using their FLIR camera.
What was unusual about it?
Well, again, no visible wings, no obvious engine, no normal heat signature you'd expect from propulsion. It just moved along. But the really strange thing happened twice during the recording.
What was that?
The object appeared to eject or vent something. A plume or a spray of hot material. Clearly visible on the thermal camera as a burst of heat trailing behind it. And right after releasing this plume, it would accelerate rapidly.
So, not a contrail, like from a jet engine.
Definitely not a contrail. Contrails are water vapor condensation, usually seen at high altitudes, and they don't show up as hot bursts on thermal imaging. The CITHA concluded this was some kind of deliberate ejection of hot material, maybe related to its propulsion or maneuvering system, something completely unknown. And ultimately, they officially classified the object as a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Couldn't explain it.
It's incredible how long this has been going on. These aren't just recent events. You mentioned the Cold War earlier.
Oh, yeah, decades. Take the RB-47 incident, 1957, over the southern United States.
What happened there?
You had a U.S. Air Force RB-47 reconnaissance jet, a sophisticated aircraft for its time carrying a crew of 6 highly trained officers packed with electronic surveillance gear.
And they encountered something.
They encountered and tracked an unknown object for over 700 miles. The encounter lasted about 90 minutes continuously.
How do they track it?
That's what makes this case so strong, especially for the era. They had multiple confirmations. 1, the crew saw it visually, a bright light behaving erratically. 2, multiple ground radar stations confirmed tracking an object alongside the RB-47. 3, and this is crucial, the plane's own specialized electronic warfare equipment, the ECM gear.
ECM.
Electronic countermeasures. Gear designed specifically to detect and analyze enemy radar signals. That gear locked onto a strange, non-standard radar-like signal coming from the object, and that signal stayed right with them, pacing the jet perfectly for the entire 700 miles.
So visual, ground radar, and the plane's own electronic sensors all confirming the same thing.
Exactly. 3 independent data streams all pointing to a physical controlled object capable of sustained high-speed flight, emitting its own detectable energy signature. The Air Force investigated, of course, under Project Blue Book. Their conclusion: unexplained. Couldn't debunk it.
Okay, tracking jets is one thing, but then there's the nuclear connection. That really raises the stakes, doesn't it? The Malmstrom Air Force Base incident, Montana, 1967.
This is probably one of the most chilling and well-documented incidents suggesting direct interference with nuclear weapons systems.
What exactly happened at Malmstrom? It's a base for ICBMs, right? Intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Correct. Minuteman missiles, the backbone of the U.S. nuclear deterrent. On 2 separate occasions in March 1967, involving 2 different missile launch control facilities, Echo Flight and Oscar Flight, something extraordinary happened. Entire groups of Minuteman ICBMs suddenly went offline. They dropped into what's called a no-go status, meaning they couldn't be launched instantly and simultaneously within each flight.
All at once. Not like one missile failing then another.
No, that's key. An entire flight of maybe 10 missiles, each in its hardened silo, independently powered and controlled, all failing at the exact same moment. There was no known conventional explanation, no power surge, no system failure that could account for that simultaneous collective shutdown.
Okay, that's technically baffling, but was there anything else going on? Anything seen?
Yes. And this is where it gets really alarming. At the exact time these missiles were going offline, security personnel on the surface, guarding the missile silos, reported seeing UFOs. Glowing reddish-orange orbs or disc-like objects hovering silently directly over the launch facilities.
Seriously, right over the missile silos.
Right over them. We have testimony from officers who were there, like Robert Salas, who was a deputy missile launch commander at Oscar Flight. He confirmed the sequence, security calls reporting a UFO hovering outside the front gate, and minutes later, his missiles start dropping offline, one by one, over about 10 seconds. All 10 of them. Unlaunchable.
So the shutdown directly coincided with the UFO sightings overhead.
The correlation is undeniable based on the witness testimony and the logs. The implication is staggering. An unknown intelligence using highly advanced technology demonstrated the ability to penetrate secure military airspace and actively, deliberately, and temporarily disable America's nuclear missiles.
That suggests not just observation, but capability, control even.
It demonstrates both a clear interest in our most sensitive weapons and a capability far beyond ours to potentially neutralize them. And Malmstrom wasn't an isolated incident. You see this pattern repeated at other nuclear sites, military bases, like the Goose Bay AFB case in Labrador back in 1954.
What happened there?
Radar tracked an object. They scrambled a Canadian CF-100 jet to intercept. The jet gets close, tries to engage, and the object just shoots straight up, vertically, at a speed that just defied gravity and aerodynamics, vanished off the radar scope in seconds, then reappeared miles away moments later. Classic UAP behavior, extreme acceleration, right-angle turns, and often observed near strategic military locations, especially those related to nuclear capabilities. It's a consistent pattern over decades.
Okay, so we've got physical traces, high-tech sensor data. Now let's talk about sheer numbers, mass sightings. When thousands of people see the same inexplicable thing, that's got to count for something, right?
It definitely adds another layer of evidence. While individual perception can be tricky, when you have a massive number of independent witnesses describing the same core phenomenon, especially over a wide area, it becomes much harder to dismiss as misidentification or hallucination.
And the classic example, the one everyone knows, has to be the Phoenix Lights, Arizona in 1997.
Absolutely. The scale of Phoenix is just immense. We're not talking about one town. We're talking thousands of witnesses spread across hundreds of miles. Arizona, Nevada, even into Sonora, Mexico.
And what was the main thing people saw? There were different reports, weren't there?
There were kind of two distinct phases or types of sightings that night, which sometimes causes confusion. But the first event, the really significant one, was this enormous object. People described it as a massive, dark, triangular, or V-shaped formation of lights.
Oh, massive.
Estimates varied, obviously, but many witnesses, including pilots, described it as being unbelievably large, maybe a mile wide, some said, just gliding silently across the sky over populated areas, Phoenix, Tucson. People saw it from their backyards, from highways.
A mile wide, silent V-shape. That's not a plane.
Definitely not a conventional aircraft. The sheer size and the absolute silence were the key features everyone agreed on. It moved slowly, deliberately.
Okay, so that was the first event. What was the second?
Later that evening, maybe an hour or two after the giant V passed through, a separate string of bright, stationary lights appeared in the sky over the Estrella Mountains near Phoenix. They just hung there for a while.
And that's what the military commented on, right?
Yes. The Air Force came out relatively quickly and said those lights, the second set, the stationary ones, were flares. Specifically, illumination flares dropped by A-10 Warthog aircraft during a training exercise at the Barry M. Goldwater Range.
Okay, flares. Plausible for stationary lights, maybe. But did that explain the giant mile-wide V that flew across the state earlier?
Not at all, and that's the critical point. The flare explanation only addressed the second, later event. It did nothing to explain the enormous, structured, silent craft witnessed by thousands much earlier in the evening. Many witnesses were adamant that what they saw first was absolutely not flares.
And then there's the political twist years later.
Right. Fife Symington. He was the governor of Arizona at the time in 1997. Initially, he actually held this somewhat bizarre press conference where he brought someone out dressed in an alien costume, trying to make light of it, calm people down.
Yeah, I remember that. Seemed like he was dismissing it.
That was the public stance. But years later, after he was out of office, Governor Symington came forward and said, actually, I saw it too. He personally witnessed that massive V-shaped craft. And he was unequivocal. He said it was otherworldly, enormous, and absolutely not flares or any man-made object he recognized.
A sitting governor saw it and later confirmed it was real and unexplained.
Yes, that adds tremendous weight. You have thousands of civilian reports, consistent descriptions, and then you have validation from the highest elected official in the state at the time who initially tried to downplay it. The sheer volume of testimony, plus that official reversal, makes Phoenix a cornerstone case.
Okay, shifting gears dramatically. Different continent, different type of witness. The aerial school encounter. Rua, Zimbabwe, 1994. This one involves children, right?
Yeah.
And something more than just seeing a craft.
Yes, this is a fascinating and somewhat controversial case because of the nature of the witnesses and the reported communication. You had over 60 school children, mostly between the ages of 6 and 12, at a private primary school in rural Zimbabwe.
And during their morning recess, out playing.
They reported seeing one or more silver disc-shaped objects land in a brushy area just beyond their playground. Land or hover very close to the ground.
The 60 kids saw this.
Over 60 kids, yeah. And they also reported seeing beings emerge from the craft or near it.
What did they describe?
Pretty consistent descriptions, actually. Small beings, maybe 3 to 4 feet tall, humanoid shape, but with very large heads, large, dark, elongated eyes, thin bodies, often described wearing dark, tight-fitting suits. Classic gray alien morphology, essentially.
Okay, seeing a craft, seeing beings. That's startling enough.
Yeah.
But there was more, wasn't there? The communication aspect.
That's the most extraordinary part. Many of the children reported receiving communication from these beings. Not spoken words, but telepathic messages, thoughts, images, feelings put directly into their minds.
Telepathic messages. What were the messages about?
Remarkably consistent themes emerged, even from very young children. The core message was apparently a warning about environmental destruction, how we are harming the planet, and about the misuse of technology, a kind of ecological and technological warning.
Wow. Complex themes for young kids. How was this investigated?
Very seriously, actually. Journalists arrived quickly, but notably, Dr. John Mack, a Pulitzer Prize-winning Harvard psychiatrist who studied abduction and contact experiences, flew to Zimbabwe specifically to investigate this case.
What did Dr. Mack conclude? He interviewed the children, right?
Yeah, he did. Extensively. Individually and in groups. He used his clinical expertise to assess their state. And his conclusion was that the children were not making it up. They weren't suffering from mass hysteria or confabulating. He found their accounts to be sincere, consistent, and deeply felt. They were describing a real, impactful, and genuinely puzzling experience.
So a Harvard psychiatrist believed the children were telling the truth about seeing a craft, beings, and receiving telepathic warnings.
He concluded their experience was authentic, that they genuinely believed what they were reporting, and it wasn't explained by conventional psychological factors. Whether the source was objectively extraterrestrial is another question, but Mack was convinced of the sincerity and consistency of the children's trauma and testimony. It's a case that really forces you to confront the possibility of direct, albeit nonverbal, communication attempts.
Okay, from rural Zimbabwe to the heart of American power. The Washington, D.C. flap, 1952. This wasn't just a few lights, this was sustained activity over the nation's capital.
Yeah, this was a major event. Huge public and official reaction. It happened over 2 consecutive weekends in July 1952.
What were people seeing? And what were the radars picking up?
Both. Radar operators at Washington National Airport, now Reagan National, and Andrews Air Force Base started tracking multiple unidentified targets. These weren't just blips. They appeared as solid, structured returns on the radar screens.
And they were maneuvering.
How? In ways that just defied known aircraft capabilities. They were clocked at speeds ranging from hovering motionless to incredibly high speeds, maybe thousands of miles per hour. They made abrupt, sharp, right-angle turns, things that would rip a conventional plane apart or, crush the pilot. And they were doing this right over the most restricted airspace in the country, the White House, the Capitol building.
Were fighters scrambled?
Oh, yeah. F-94 Starfire interceptor jets were scrambled from nearby bases. And this is where it got really frustrating for the Air Force, because the objects seemed to play cat and mouse with them. The jets would try to close in, and the objects would just accelerate away, easily outrunning them, or they'd simply vanish off the radar, and visually, the moment the jets got close, they demonstrated complete technological superiority and evasiveness.
So fighters couldn't catch them, Radar was tracking them over the White House. What was the official reaction? This must have caused panic.
It caused a huge stir. Front page news across the country. The Air Force was under immense pressure. They ended up holding the largest Pentagon press conference since World War II to try and calm things down.
What did they say? Do they have an explanation?
They tried.
Yep.
Major General John Samford, the Air Force Director of Intelligence, addressed the media. He acknowledged the radar trackings were real, corroborated in some cases, but he offered a primary explanation of temperature inversions.
Temperature inversions, like weather causing radar ghosts.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah. The theory was that layers of warm air over cool air could bend radar beams and create false echoes. It's a real phenomenon, but whether it could explain all the structured targets, their incredible speeds, their intelligent maneuvers, and the visual confirmations from pilots and ground observers, well, that was debatable.
So they offered a possible explanation, but did they admit some were unexplained?
Samford had to concede that point. He admitted that some percentage of sightings remained unexplained even after rigorous analysis. It was a rare public admission from the military right at the height of the Cold War that they didn't fully control their own capital's airspace and couldn't identify everything flying in it. A truly profound moment. Okay, so we've seen the physical traces, the advanced tech tracked by sensors, the mass sightings. What happens when you put all these threads together? A final pattern seems to emerge, and it's one of containment, suppression even. It seems the more credible, the more tangible the evidence, the more likely there's an effort, official or otherwise, to deny it, hide it, or make the witnesses doubt what they saw.
And sometimes that goes beyond just denial. It involves active recovery, maybe, like the Coyami crash story, Chihuahua Desert, Mexico, 1974.
This is a deeply disturbing account, sourced primarily from leaked intelligence documents and whistleblower testimony, so keep that context in mind. But the story itself is stark.
What's the story?
U.S. radar reportedly tracked an unknown object moving incredibly fast, something like 2,500 miles per hour, heading south over Mexico. At the same time, they were tracking a small civilian plane, a Cessna 180, in the same area.
And they collided.
The radar tracks converged, and then both signals vanished simultaneously, indicating a likely mid-air collision or event over the remote Chihuahua Desert.
So what happened on the ground?
The Mexican military responded first. They deployed a convoy to the suspected crash zone. They apparently found two sites. One was the wreckage of the Cessna. The other, some distance away, was a largely intact, disc-shaped craft. Smooth, seamless metal, maybe 16 feet across, partially buried in the sand.
Intact. And did they report anything else?
The last radio transmission intercepted from that Mexican recovery team, according to these leaked sources, mentioned something chilling. Posiblemente biological. Possibly biological. Suggesting occupants, maybe.
Wow. Okay, so the Mexicans found it. Then what?
Then, according to the leaks, the U.S. decided it needed to retrieve the object. Under extreme secrecy, a U.S. military recovery team was dispatched. They crossed the border into Mexico covertly without any official diplomatic clearance.
They just went in.
Apparently so. When the U.S. team arrived at the disc crash site, they reportedly found the Mexican soldiers who had been guarding it dead.
Dead how?
The reports suggest they showed signs of massive cellular damage, as if they'd been exposed to intense radiation or some kind of unknown energy field from the craft. Very similar, potentially, to the types of injuries seen in the Cash Landrum case, but obviously fatal in this instance.
That's horrific. What did the U.S. team do?
The reported protocol was brutal and thorough. They allegedly incinerated the bodies of the Mexican soldiers on site. They scrubbed the entire area clean of any evidence. Then they rigged the disc, airlifted it out along with the Cessna wreckage, and transported it all back to the U.S., likely to a secure facility.
And the official record?
A complete blank. No official U.S. or Mexican government acknowledgement of the event. No public record of a crash. No death records for those Mexican soldiers. It exists only in these leaked intelligence documents like the supposed Aquarius briefing and coded testimony. If true, it represents an extraordinary example of covert transnational recovery and evidence suppression at the highest level. A perfect historical void.
That idea of suppression, of making things disappear,
Yeah.
doesn't just apply to physical objects, does it? It extends to witnesses. Which brings us to the whole Men in Black phenomenon.
Yeah.
MIBs.
Right, and the MIB phenomenon is fascinating because it seems almost like a necessary component if there's a systematic cover-up. You need a mechanism to silence or discredit witnesses, especially after close encounters.
Is it just a modern myth, though? Or is there evidence for it?
Well, researcher Albert-Musale spent decades compiling a massive database of humanoid encounters from around the world. And his work strongly suggests the MIB phenomenon isn't just random anecdotes, it's a persistent cross-cultural pattern. These visits almost always follow significant UFO sightings, particularly those involving landed craft or visible occupants.
And these aren't just guys in black suits asking questions politely, are they? The descriptions are often weird.
Very weird. They operate through intimidation, psychological pressure, and often exhibit deeply strange behavior that hints they might not be entirely human, or at least not normal government agents.
Give us an example.
Okay, take the Paul Miller case. Minnow, North Dakota, 1961. Miller saw a glowing object land, saw two figures emerge. He panicked and actually fired a rifle at them. The object took off.
Okay, traumatic encounter.
Hours later, two men show up at his door. Identical dark suits, maybe slightly old-fashioned. Here's the unnerving part. They knew everything about him. His family details, his confidential military service history, stuff not easily accessible.
And their message.
Flat, emotionless. They just quietly told him it would be best if you forgot about last night. Pure intimidation through implied knowledge and authority. No overt threats needed.
Okay, that's creepy. But sometimes it gets even stranger, right? More theatrical.
Absolutely. Like the Dr. Herbert Hopkins case, Maine, 1976. Hopkins was a respected physician who also consulted on UFO cases. He gets this strange phone call, identifies himself as a UFO researcher. Minutes later, a man is at his door.
That fast.
Minutes. And the description Hopkins gave is classic high strangeness MIB. The man was pale, almost waxy skin, no eyebrows or eyelashes, bright red, lipstick-like lips that looked painted on, wearing a black suit, black tie, black hat. Gave off an aura of intense coldness and artificiality.
Okay, just looking weird is one thing.
But then came the demonstration. The visitor told Hopkins to stop his UFO research, took a penny or a coin from his pocket, placed it on his own hand. Hopkins watched as the coin seemed to glow, then dematerialize, just vanished into thin air right in the MIB's hand.
It dissolved.
Dissolved, dematerialized, gone. Then the visitor said something like, "My energy is running low, I must leave now," and he left.
What did Hopkins do?
He was absolutely terrified, believed he'd encountered something non-human with impossible abilities. He immediately gathered up all his UFO research files, tapes, everything, and destroyed them. Burned them. The psychological impact was total. That wasn't a request, it was a command backed by an impossible display.
It's like psychological warfare.
Exactly. And it's not always direct confrontation. Sometimes it's just surveillance, persistent, unnerving observation, like the Jack Robinson case, Jersey City, 1968.
What happened there?
Robinson was another UFO researcher. He and his wife started noticing a man sitting in a black sedan parked down the street, just watching their apartment. For days. Same car, same man. Unmoving, often described as unblinking, just staring.
Just watch.
Just watching. They even managed to get a photograph of the car and the man. Around the same time, they started noticing small disturbances inside their apartment when they came home. Papers slightly moved, drawers maybe opened and closed. Nothing stolen, just signs someone had been inside.
So surveillance plus subtle intrusion.
Right. It creates this intense paranoia and feeling of violation. The MIB phenomenon, whether it's a shadowy government agency or something even stranger, seems designed to enforce silence and isolation through psychological pressure, bizarre displays, and the implication of total omniscience and control. It's the enforcement arm of this oppression, you could say.
So after digging through all this, the physical traces, the radar logs, the pilot testimony, the mass sightings, the suppression, what does it all mean? Where does this synthesis leave us? I mean, we've laid out cases with real physical scars. You can point to the radiation burns on Betty Cash and Vicki Landrum, the radium-226 at Falcon Lake. That's tangible. Then you have the performance data, Nimitz, gimbal, the world's best pilots and radar systems, tracking objects that pull maneuvers flat out impossible for our technology. Zero inertia, instantaneous acceleration, transmedium travel without slowing down. That defies physics as we know it.
And woven through it all is this persistent pattern, an unknown presence demonstrating clear signs of non-human intelligence, operating technology that's generations ahead of ours, showing a distinct, almost unsettling interest in our most sensitive technology, especially nuclear sites like Malmstrom. And alongside that presence, a consistent pattern of official denial, obfuscation, or in cases like Koyami or the MIB encounters, active suppression and containment of the evidence and the witnesses.
Yeah, when you see that range, melted rock in Socorro, radioactive soil in Falcon Lake, sophisticated infrared video from Navy jets, simultaneous ICBM shutdowns, thousands seeing the same giant craft over Phoenix, credible reports of recovered discs, and these bizarre MIB encounters. And the official response is almost always nothing to see here, or it was flares, or temperature inversion, or just silence, even when the evidence, like the Cash Landrum medical records, is undeniable.
Yeah.
What does that pattern itself tell us?
It forces you to ask a really fundamental question, doesn't it? If the evidence for something extraordinary is so varied, so persistent, coming from such credible sources and advanced sensors, and yet the official posture is overwhelmingly one of denial or containment, what does that reveal about the reality we think we understand? About the limits of what we're allowed to know?
Maybe the most extraordinary thing about these UAP cases isn't just what people are seeing in the sky. Maybe it's the incredible lengths that seem to be taken consistently over decades to ensure that the evidence is minimized, that witnesses forget, or that the public remains uncertain. So the final thought to leave you with is this. If that suppression is real, what unacknowledged truths about our place in the cosmos, about reality itself, are we being shielded from? Or maybe